This is every level of Football Manager 26 save difficulty explained, and some examples. Starting with a level 1, a fairly safe top flight rebuild, all the way down to level 7 where, let's face it, you should not start off employed. And hopefully there's some examples in this list which will give you some inspiration to pick your Football Manager 26 save. So if you're looking for FM26 save ideas, you're in the right place. Starting off, of course, level 1. So with FM26 coming, one of the biggest announcements that Football Manager made was the Premier League license and the new graphics engine for the match, and that's where we've seen these new cutscenes presented in the Premier League already. So it makes sense that for level 1, it's probably the first time you're playing it. It's when you want to have a little bit of a casual version of the game where you're getting to grips of it and learning and enjoying all of the new features. And out of all of the clubs in the Premier League, there's definitely one that stands out as a good option for this pick. But as a broad answer, level 1 of a Football Manager 26 save is going to be a club outside of the typical top 6 in the Premier League. Now, why does this work for level 1? Well, it gives you some breathing room, some familiarity. You've probably watched the Premier League, you probably understand the players in whatever team you decide to pick, at least who's good, who's bad. So this gives you a little bit of leeway where you don't have to worry about things like that, and you can get to the grips of the game itself. Learn where things are. Learn how to actually play it. Learn how tactics work, especially with the likes of in and out of possession. It's something that's brand new to Football Manager. We need to get the grips of that before we really dive into a heavy challenge on Football Manager, and I think going with an established team in the top division is probably the way to go, with good revenue and good infrastructure. But if I had to be ultra specific on one certain club, because you cannot think for yourself, it's going to be Nottingham Forest. They've already had to change their manager this season, despite having who I think one of the best managers in the league for getting the job done and carrying them into European football for this upcoming season. And it doesn't look like the change is going down very well at all. They've also got new signings such as Hutchinson, Kalamuendu, Ndoye, Bakwa, Zinchenko and Douglas Luiz on loan. And as I said, you also get to experience European football too. Plus, I imagine that in the new game, they'll probably have some decent finances so you can enjoy playing Football Manager and sign some new players that, to be honest, that's one of the most exciting parts of the game when you first get it, is buying new players, because obviously it's a brand new experience. So the challenge itself would be to get this team, or if you went with Nottingham Forest, to win the Premier League. Take them to the Champions League as sort of like a step 1, win the Premier League as an overall, and if you're having so much fun, go all the way. Try and win the Champions League with them. Because let's face it, it's going to start getting trickier. On to level 2. Another huge feature in the new FM26, of course, is the addition of the Women's Leagues, opening up a whole new world of players that you can learn about and enjoy using Football Manager. So level 2 of an FM26 save is going to be a little trickier if, like me, you know really little about the women's game. And again, I think there is an obvious choice for this pick, but a more broad answer would be picking a team that are either mid-table or below in the Women's Super League, which is basically the equivalent of the Premier League in England. Now, why does this work, you ask? And I'm going to answer it because, as I explained, unless you are a genius when it comes to the women's game, and some of you might really have a lot of knowledge about the women's game, then it opens up the added challenge of not knowing any good players in the database. And to be honest, with it being the first time ever that Football Manager has included women, that still might be quite intriguing and tricky anyway, even if you did have some ball knowledge on the women's game. And turning that difficulty up slightly, I think, makes it also kind of fun, because that's one of the most exciting things about Football Manager, is exploring the new database. And now we've got a whole new database of, what was it, like 30-odd thousand players to learn about, and that's what I think makes it rather appealing, while still keeping somewhat of a familiar structure, because a lot of the teams in the WSL are similar to the ones in the Premier League as well. And when it comes to playing Football Manager, you can again enjoy the new features while still having that slight bit of difficulty turned up because it is the WSL. And the club, if I had to pick one, is actually going to be Manchester United. Now, again, I don't know too much about the WSL or women's football in general, but Manchester United do have some decent players. They've got Melvin Millard, Ella Toone, and Maya Letitia. And to be honest, although they have really strong players, they're still not as strong as the likes of Arsenal or Chelsea, who have actually won the Women's Super League 6 years in a row. So the challenge is rather simple. You take the club that you have selected, or you take Manchester United if you go with what I suggested, and you try to win and dethrone Chelsea. You'll win that Women's Super League, and of course they do have a Champions League there too, which you can also try and take on and win. But there's an added side quest to this little challenge in level 2. Go out and find some of the women's games version of Wonder Kids, because of course we love doing that in Football Manager anyway. That's our bread and butter, growing up playing Football Manager all the way through to now. It's still the thing I love doing the most on a new game, is finding the Wonder Kids. Now we have a whole new database to do that, so there's a little side quest. On to level 3. Level 3 is where some restrictions are going to be added, because once you've gotten used to playing FM26, it's time to really crank the difficulty up ever so slightly with level 3's challenge. And I think there's many versions of this which you can actually up the difficulty even more should you really wish. And I'm actually going to give 2 examples for clubs in this specific challenge. But level 3 of an FM26 save is going to be either a youth to gold or a youth only challenge. So Youth to Gold is the version that I like to play. It's where you could only sign teenagers as soon as they're 20 years of age. They are not available to you, and you have to sell players once they get to 30 years old because you're not allowed to use them. So it kind of encourages you to sell players at their peak value to make big profits, hence Youth to Gold. But again, if you're going to up the ante with this, the youth only challenge would imply that you only use the players that are coming through your youth intake and not actually buying any players. Now, some people think this is not fun, me, and some people really enjoy that side of it, the challenge of it. And that's where I've given this sort of toss-up between the two. Shouldn't do that again. I've given you this kind of toss-up between the two, which one you could choose should you wish to go either way. Now, why this works is Youth to Gold is a very fun challenge. As I mentioned, you're signing youngsters, so we're going off of that Wonder Kids scenario again. You're hunting for the Wonder Kids, and after a couple of seasons, you're trying to find new gens, which is always even more fun, in my opinion, anyway. So you've got that aspect of it. Plus, you can obviously choose a team which they can have bad finances because eventually you're going to make them a lot of money through selling them, the Youth to Gold aspect. And there's something rather satisfying when you get to transform a team that maybe weren't anywhere near as good or doing quite well beforehand just by signing teenagers into a world-beating club where, you know, you can lift European trophies and you're challenging for the league title. You become really attached to the players that you've bought because you bought them when they were really young and you developed them into hopefully world-class players. Or, for instance, if it's a youth intake only, you obviously have that they are ours, it's homegrown, these are our young lion talents coming through. That's again really a fun aspect of this challenge. And with the youth intake only, you can focus on other parts of the game, such as of course upgrading your youth intake aspects, so the youth training, I can't remember what they call it now, the networking and stuff like that. So the 2 examples I've got are actually both in La Liga, and in fact they're both in the same region. We're going for Real Sociedad for Youth to Gold, and we're going for Bilbao in the youth intake only. The reason being is they're both Basque clubs, which is the region that they are from, which is kind of well known for producing some of the best players and managers, actually, which for these 2 clubs is perfect because, well, Real Sociedad do keep quite a Basque basis, but they do sign other players and they are allowed, you know, to have non-Basque players. Bilbao isn't. Bilbao is only a Basque-only club, which means, to be honest, transfers are kind of out the window anyway, and they really heavily rely on those youth intakes. So the challenge is to topple the two big cheeses in La Liga and, of course, see what you can do. But again, if you're doing it with Bilbao, fair play, I don't have the patience for it. Some of you might. But if you're going for Real Sociedad and you fancy doing a youth to gold, I think that's a really fun one for this season. Level 4 time. Now, if you've gotten this far, you must be really enjoying playing the game. And FM26 is a game that you now want to sink a few more hours into and potentially make a little bit more difficult for yourself in terms of the challenge you're about to undertake. And that's why at level 4, it's probably a good time for you to think about subscribing as well, because a lot of these challenges across the year of Football Manager, I might be taking on myself. And I tell you what, it would be an awful shame if you were to miss watching me fail at all of them. So level 4 of an FM26 save is a team in turmoil in Tier 2. There's a lot of T's there. And with licenses in leagues such as France, Germany, and of course the Championship in England, those are really good divisions to find a team who are so bad that they really need you to save them. And these challenges can be quite good, and this is why it works. The challenge itself will create loads of different scenarios that could become good problems for you to solve. For instance, finances are always a big one. In these leagues, sometimes these clubs just make silly decisions and you just leak money and you just don't know where from. And the only way of saving those pennies, but also stopping your team from literally plummeting into abyss, is getting yourself promoted. But you can't do that unless you've got the money. But you can't buy any players and you haven't got the money, so you're going to have to find out a way of doing it somehow. Now, loans is obviously a good thing. My American friend Zealand Shannon will tell you that. But there's obviously a lot of other problems that might occur as well. For instance, just staying up in the division that you're in, or, of course, staying up once you get promoted, say, into the Premier League or the Bundesliga or League One, then it's one of those scenarios again where it's like, I'm back to square one again. You're almost taking on two challenges in one because of that promotion aspect. Not to mention, if you finally start finding some good hidden gem players, they'll probably get stolen from you. And this is also a challenge that could take you anywhere from 5 to 10 years before you're even challenging for instance, the Premier League title. Now, the team that I suggest you do this challenge with is Sheffield Wednesday. And they are awful this season. And financially, they're gone as well. And I really hope that that's reflected in FM26. I want to see what I'm seeing in real life to begin with. If Sheffield Wednesday are doing as bad as what I am hearing in the league and off the pitch, then I want to see that in FM26. So if that is the case, I think Sheffield Wednesday is the perfect team for a level 4 challenge on FM26. They're obviously quite a big club as well, and a very big sort of fan base around it, which gives you a bit of added sort of bringing them back, bringing a fallen giant back. It's a massive club that's just doing terribly right now. And only about 25 years ago, they were in the Premier League and seemed quite comfortable. So your challenge is to take a struggling second-tier team or Sheffield Wednesday from the abyss of potentially going down again all the way back to the top of the Premier League or whatever league you decide to go in. Level 5, and we're looking at Giants. Now, there are certain clubs around the world where things gotten so bad for them, they've actually been relegated down multiple divisions and in some cases has had to rebrand as a different football club. For instance, this summer, Union Brescia is a brand new club which was formed off the back of the disbandment of Brescia Calcio from last season, which of course was the team that had the likes of Roberto Baggio growing up. And Pep Guardiola played for him. So level 5 of an FM26 save is going to be the Fallen Soldier Challenge. This, of course, relates to how a club has fallen down multiple divisions off the back of this punishment. Maybe it was financially. I don't really know. So a lot of clubs have done, obviously, match fixing was Juve's one in the past, but mainly it's down to financial troubles and rule breaks and stuff like that. And you have to take that Fallen Soldier club and bring them back to glory all the way to the top. Hopefully make them bigger than what they originally was. So why does this work? Well, seasoned Football Manager players, these are the types of challenges that you can take on because you have a lot of experience in the game. You sunk a lot of hours into it, and this usually means especially if it was a fresh club that needs dismantling and putting back together, that you have multiple things that you have to take into consideration. Maybe the club has like a history that you can sort of relate to and you want to bring into it when you bring this club back, like the Phoenix from the Ashes. For instance, Union Brescia, now that they are a new club and obviously don't have the likes of what Brescia Calcio's history, you have to rebuild your own history. So find a player that was just like Baggio, somebody who has a lot of flamboyant and flair, and it's just an amazing player for the Italian national team. But the challenge, obviously, is going to be a difficult one because you have to bring them back up, but also the board is going to be expecting you to do this almost immediately. But sometimes these clubs need dismantling first. There might be a reason why the finances are so bad, because the players on the books, they were taking a lot more money than what they should have been, and that's the reason why you're in that predicament in the first place. So examples of this idea, of course, are Union Brescia that I mentioned. There's Belenenses in Portugal, but the one I think is the most interesting one is Bordeaux in France, who have actually been relegated down to the 4th tier for such a massive club in Bordeaux, who of course had the likes of Zidane and were very good in the 90s. That's massive. All the way down in the 4th tier, bringing them all the way back, and you still have the challenge of PSG to overcome. So that is the challenge. Can you do this with Bordeaux? They are going to be in the 4th tier of French football. Can you bring them back all the way to Ligue 1 and then, of course, overthrow the likes of PSG? Get rid of the dirty rats of Rennes. Monaco could be really good. Lyon might have recovered by then. Nice have a lot of money. There's a lot of obstacles in your way if you're going to be Bordeaux, not to mention, of course, you have to get into the division first, which is 3 promotions. Level 6, and we're nearly there. Now, this is for the hardcore Football Manager players. You only really get to this reality if you are a seasoned Football Manager player and you are really looking for a challenge. And this challenge is not for your average FM26 player. And for this, you actually have to go back to the manager profile and make sure you've got no experience. You've got Sunday League experience, no coaching badges. Obviously, it might be a bit of a revamp on the new one, but whatever it is, make sure it's minimum. We want no experience whatsoever. We want your manager to have never been heard of in the world ever before, unless it was just, I don't know, down Sunday League and maybe you scored a worldie once and that's, you made the paper. In international football and professional football, that they don't know who you are. So I actually think you can do this whether you are either starting unemployed, if you want the kind of randomness, the mystery of it, I don't know where I'm going to end up type of scenario. That's always quite fun. Also can be really frustrating. Sometimes I get excited thinking I'm going to start unemployed and then start off and I'm like, I can't get a job, and it's just really frustrating watching the time tick by. Or you start off like a non-league to legend, like Lelujo would do, for example, where he picks a local side to him that's very small and he builds them up to a certain point where either he moves or he can take that club on. And again, the restrictions, I'm not really saying that you can restrict yourself too much. I genuinely feel like this is one of those saves where the challenge itself is you and not what you're doing with the team. So, for example, say the example I'm going to give in a minute, if you were to take over that team as the first club that you manage and not start off unemployed, to say that you have to stick with that club all the way, I don't think we should use that as a restriction for level 6. So level 6 of an FM26 save is that classic Sunday League to Superstar / non-league to legend type of save. Now, why this works, obviously there's a massive big challenge to begin with, if you're starting unemployed as well, to even just get a job. But when you're starting with 0 badges, 0 reputation, just little things like trying to persuade your players to listen to you is a lot more difficult than what you would if you had a manager profile where you've got a lot of experience. Again, we're leaving the should you leave clubs up to you. Maybe your intention is to stay with a club, you end up getting fired. You don't want to start again, just carry it on. See if you can continue and obviously rebuild yourself at that point. And the challenge is, of course, gaining the experience and reputation, trying to ask for coaching badges, and The more obviously you get, the easier it is to ask for them, because technically your club should be better and your determination, whatever it is now, is better to persuade the club to actually give you the money to do those coaching badges. Now, my examples for this, and I would say you have to kind of open up a lot of lower leagues. So if you're just focusing on the English leagues, for example, if you're thinking I just want to do Sunday league, non-league type of football, then yeah, open up the Vanarama National, North, South, whatever. But sometimes it is also kind of fun to do those really obscure leagues in Europe. Open them up as well, because then you really don't know. You go on a little mini European adventure and find a club that you absolutely adore and fall in love with, and you're going to think, right, I'm going to stay with this club and take them all the way. This could be a save where you don't know how you're going to play it until you play it. You may get a club and you feel like, okay, I'm enjoying this, and then 1 or 2 seasons in, you're like, I've taken this club as far as I can go. I actually want to move club. Or your thinking is, I'm going to move club along the way, and then go, I've grown really attached to this side from Latvia. I'm going to stick with them. And that's the beauty, I think, of this save. But ultimately, the challenge in itself is to try and take them and make yourself a massive legend of the game. That's the whole point of this. Take yourself from an absolute nobody to somebody. Now, the club that I have chosen for this, should you wish to start with a club, is actually Morecambe. Now, they were so close from not existing, so we have got to be grateful that this club is still around, and I do have a bit of a connection with Morecambe. As you can see, I've got some lovely wrestling titles up there. This one right here is the Odyssey Pro Wrestling Tag Team Championship, and that means I am a Tag Team Champion of Morecambe. So I do have a bit of a close connection with them. They have just been relegated down into Vanarama National League, and from speaking to the people of Morecambe, they really need some help because they have not kept hardly any of their players. It's basically a brand new team, like we kind of mentioned before. They've never really done anything either. They always work with the smallest budgets. You might see Tyson Fury walking around if you become the manager there. That could be a good club to start off with. Maybe you could take them to the championship and go, I've done enough for them. Now it's time for focusing on me, and that's when you can move club and focus on you and become that legend, that football manager legend that you're always destined to be. It's level 7 time and it's maximum difficulty. Yes, the hardest challenge potentially on FM26 for a level 7. What we're kind of going off the aspect of is the amount that you would have to do. Because I think this challenge, and there could be harder challenges across FM26, but the one specific challenge that I'm going to suggest is something that I think I am genuinely going to do this year, probably against my dad, and I think it could be such a fun challenge, but also be ridiculously difficult. Now, of course, we've got like certain challenges, San Marino challenge, you've got obviously the Sir Alex Ferguson challenge, all these like named kind of like fictional challenges that Football Manager creators and just players have done in the past. The Pentagon Challenge, for example, which is always a fun one and a difficult one. To be honest, that's probably in this level too. But the one that I always love doing the most, and it's my dad's favorite as well, is the Glory Hunter. Dr. Benji created it a long time ago. I used to watch the series, his first one, even his second one. I think I watched that one too. But when I started doing the Glory Hunters myself, I fell in love with doing them. Dad really enjoys doing them. And this year, you can go one step further, and I think you know where this is going. So for a level 7 of an FM26 save, we are going to do the double Glory Hunter Challenge, the ultimate Glory Hunter Challenge, the cross-gender Glory Hunter Challenge. Name still needs to be thought of, really. But I don't know, I think it's a great concept, and why it works is because the Glory Hunter Challenge allows you to do all of the fun things in Football Manager, but with the added thing of the mystery of where you're going. And obviously the time restraint of usually it's 20 seasons, you're probably going to have to up that to maybe 35, 40, potentially. Because what we're going to add on to this challenge is almost double the amount of trophies that you have to win. Yeah, if you haven't guessed it by now, what we are trying to aim for is to win the top 5. Well, maybe I haven't even explained the Glory Hunter Challenge yet. What am I doing? Glory Hunter Challenge is when you have to win the top 5 leagues. You can be the one to judge whether it's either Portugal or France, because I've done both. I take France out because sometimes I think it's a bit kind of boring, and Portugal is a bit more of a fun one to use, I guess. But you have to win the top 5 leagues, the Europa League, and the Champions League, all within 20 seasons. Now, it used to also have international management. That's gone in the future until they bring it back. And maybe when they do bring it back and it's revamped, we can then actually add this back in, and it could be a lot more fun to include the international tournaments, the World Cup and the Euros, for example. But what you are thinking for level 7 is obviously taking it one step further, and that is adding all the women's leagues as well. Can you do the ultimate Glory Hunter test, where you start off unemployed, with no coaching badges or experience, take over in the women's game? Now, we still don't know how qualified you have to be in comparison to the men's game to get a high level job in the women's game. That's something obviously we won't find out until the game comes out. But I am really curious, because Glory Hunter is one of those challenges where you can't really start unemployed with no badges. You could, but it would just take you 15 years before you even got the chance. So you're better off not doing so. But if the added aspect of you could get a job in the women's game a lot easier with less badges and experience, you could do this. You could do it. You could start off in the women's game, work your way up, win the top 5 leagues, win the Women's Champions League, but then go across into the men's game if there's a job that pops up. And you can actually, of course, do both within the same save. Maybe you can jump across to the women's save and do the women's database, win a couple of trophies there, and then get poached for the men's game, but then have to come back to the women's game as well. The possibilities of this challenge boggles my mind, but I'm so excited to take something like this on. The added aspect of it just gives me so much what mystery, what will happen. I think this is a great challenge. The double Glory Hunter Challenge. So that is this level 7 challenge. You have to try and find a way of starting with as minimal experience and coaching badges as possible. Get yourself a job in the women's game. Build yourself up enough to win the Glory Hunter Challenge in both the men's and the women's game, or as one manager. That is the level 7 of FM26 save.